From on the story, we're joined by the DA's Chief Whip, Siviwe Gwarube. Siviwe, good evening. Thanks for your time. Who is on your list of nominees to serve on that panel?
Good evening, Kathy, and good evening to your viewers. We have also, I hear some of the opposition parties and the ruling party. I think there are some similarities there. Former Justice Dikgang Moseneke is one of our names. Former Judge Jeanette Traverso is the name we've also selected, and Yvonne Mokgoro is somebody also that we have selected. Our view here in this process, Kathy, is that because of the technical nature of the Section 89 inquiry, it's going to be very important. While the rules allowed you to nominate people who are either in the legal fraternity or prominent South Africans, we thought it was important to limit it to people mostly who are legal eagles, so to speak, because of the very technical nature of what the panel will have to do, which is to ascertain whether or not there is prima facie evidence to suggest that there should be impeachment proceedings leveled against the President and Parliament.
Of course, many of the opposition parties in Parliament, including yourself, are likely to take credit for how far this process has been able to move along, because there's been a whole lot of pressure that has been coming from several MPs.
Yes, of course. Look, I mean, obviously this was a motion that was moved by the ATM. We were always of the view that we should rather have an ad hoc committee established. And the idea there was that it would mirror the same way or the same process that we had seen with the Nkandla ad hoc committee, where the ad hoc committee would have powers to investigate, to subpoena witnesses, and really get to the bottom of some of the allegations that are facing the president. And Kathy, if you look at the proceedings, or at least the sitting that took place on Tuesday, where the president essentially categorically stated that he's been advised or has received legal advice that he should not respond to questions in the House, it is clear now that we're going to have to, as Parliament, enforce that the president comes clean with some of what has happened and some of the allegations that he faces regarding the Phala Phala saga.
Do you believe that you are a step closer to getting that done, especially following what happened with that programming committee today, because that is where things were deferred to after the suspension of that question and answer session earlier in the week?
Yeah. Look, I mean, firstly, I think it's important to state up front that when the Speaker suspended the session on Tuesday, she did so outside of the rules of Parliament, which is deeply concerning for us, because all we have in the institution that keeps it together and its integrity are the rules of Parliament. And so you can't willy-nilly suspend the rules when it suits you. And so what we sought to do as the DA and the other opposition parties today was to really rectify that, so that we don't have a precedent that is codified, or at least a precedent that is set, where the Speaker or the presiding officer can decide in the middle of a question that is posed to a minister, a president, that in fact they're going to suspend the proceedings. So we are pleased that the question session is going to be rescheduled, and that the particular question that the president was busy with is going to be posed to him again. Because we think it's important, and we don't think that the president can get away with simply saying, I've been advised not to answer, because of the ongoing investigations by the other law enforcement agencies. The reality is that, Kathy, those law enforcement agencies are almost an extension of the executive. The national legislature has a role to get to the bottom of what a sitting president is facing, allegations that he is facing as a sitting president. We've got a role to play, and if we neglect that role, we won't be any different from what Parliament was accused of doing under state capture, and the Speaker won't be any different to some of her predecessors who essentially aided and abetted state capture by the inaction of the national legislature. So we've got to do better.
Earlier, we heard from the minister in the presidency, Nqabayomzi, who said, the president has full confidence in the work that will be done by an independent panel to actually review evidence, almost seeming to choose that over any other process that will take place within Parliament, because he says that will simply be a debate between MPs. Let's talk about the question of accountability in the context of Parliament and what you as members of the opposition would want that to look like to fully satisfy yourselves about the fact that Parliament is playing the role it needs to.
Look, I think, Kathy, for us, I think an ad hoc committee, which is a multi-party committee, would have the requisite powers. It can subpoena witnesses. It can subpoena the president, ministers who have been implicated, state entities that have been implicated, and can pose the direct questions. What we're seeing, for instance, with the impeachment inquiry into the public protector, it would follow an almost a similar sort of fashion where you are able to, without any limitations, without any timing limitations, pose direct questions to people who have been implicated or people who may know something about it. And so our view is that until you are able to pose a question and pose the relevant questions, and the president is not allowed to simply say, according to legal advice, I can't answer that. Until you are able to pose those questions very straightly and also enforce that. And remember, one of the big frustrations for me personally, for sure, Kathy, is that we also seem to be tiptoeing around the executive when, if it suits you, whenever it suits you, if you can come and maybe do us a favor by coming to the House. That's not how it should work. The legislature is a place where the executive accounts to. And so we should be able to demand those answers. And I only wish that we could be united in our commitment to accountability across all political lines, because I think there would be greater powers in the legislature if that were to be the case. And so for us, that's what we would seek. And we're willing to go to court because we think it's going to be a sham if we simply allow either a one-day motion of no confidence to be posed or to be tabled against the president, and it's either won or defeated on the whims of MPs. Our view is that the people of South Africa who send us to Parliament want to know what happened. They don't want to know what our political posturing is about. They want to know what happened. Is the president liable, or has the president broken laws? And until we can get those answers, I think that our job is not yet done.
DA Chief Whip, Siviwe Gwarube. Let's leave it there for tonight.